On this channel, I recently made a video proposing an answer to Minecraft's inventory management issues, and if you think the game doesn't have management issues, well, I made the argument in that video, so maybe you'll want to go back and check it out, because in this video, we're going to take a look at a mod that has implemented this idea into Minecraft itself. And if you need a refresher, the idea in a nutshell is to add a new key to the game that can bring up a new and simple GUI that allows you to swap the items that are in your hotbar to those elsewhere in your inventory through this selection menu. It would also work with shulker boxes, making them even more powerful. So all of the items that you have in a shulker box can be sought out through this interface that looks for similar items based on the one you picked in your hotbar. This is going to be a game-changing mod for those of you who choose to use it, and it couldn't have been made possible without help from Lizard of Oz, who helped flesh out the ideas, TR, who has now developed and implemented this thing as a mod, and Stridey of Vanilla Tweaks, who helped provide some graphics that the mod uses. And lastly, all of you, community input is really important here. Please do comment down below after you've watched the video, because all your feedback is going to help make this mod better, as it's going to be actively developed into the future. That means that potentially more features are going to come to it, but as of right now we want to present this in a way that is friendly to the vanilla game and to Mojang if ever they would like to pick up this idea and implement it to the game itself. It's highly unlikely that this would happen, but inventory management does need to be addressed, so all and any ideas being out there are going to be helpful. Now, one of the very first things I'm going to show you is the new look of the mod. Here's how it looked previously, and now you'll see it looks a little nicer and cleaner. But also, these list sizes are going to be dynamic. They're going to adapt to the amount of items we want to give the player the option to switch to. And to get to that end result, we had to go through a load of different design iterations. And while I have your attention, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you want to stay informed with this mod. And now let's continue with the design process. This started with trying to get access to more items in the selection wheel, and this didn't look right, and this definitely didn't, but we also toyed around with the idea that you could have some selection options up top that changed everything below. After messing around with this a little bit more, it just became clear that this was too bulky and didn't look right for the game. So then I started to investigate clean layouts, like inside of a double chest where you could see a lot of items all at once and ways that some of those items could be arranged. I also realized that we didn't need to leave an empty space in the middle, and the gold ingot here is just to sort of represent that your cursor could start in the very middle and you could move out to the selections around it. So with this tighter layout, we wanted to take inspiration from something else in the game, which led to this layout, and then simplified a little further. And then with some help from Stridey of Vanilla Tweaks, we got this very clean looking layout. It went through some further tweaks and changes, and eventually we decided that the layout should be dynamic, and initially we sort of stuck to rectangle and square shapes. And as you can imagine, there were some selections that just didn't fit the square layout and the amount of slots that offered, so we ended up with some of these odd layouts too. And it's still somewhat a work in progress. As you'll see with this selection, we've got a missing slot down the bottom here. So hopefully at some point we'll figure out a bunch of cohesive layouts that don't have any empty slots. So the mod is being actively developed, but where it currently stands, it's as friendly as possible to the vanilla game. And there are some ideas to take it a little bit further too, which we'll discuss at the end of this video. For now though, I have hopped into Survival Minecraft, specifically the Hermitcraft Season 7 world, so that I could grab all of my old items and shulker boxes, which are just full of loads of different useful materials. Of course, all of what I'm showing you interacts with the contents of shulker boxes, and the first thing we'll look at are pallets. So if I grab this glowstone here, you'll see that we get a selection of other light sources. And then when we swap it out, we'll be able to swap it back to glowstone again, and what it's doing is it's swapping these items in and out of this shulker box. And you may have noticed a little oversight. Yes, the sea lantern was lumped into the prismarine category. This stuff is still subject to change. But now you can probably imagine, with so many blocks inside of this game and so many different ways to group them together, that this can become quite problematic. But luckily, due to the way the mod is written, you can actually customize all of these yourself with a resource pack. This one here will be equipped by default, but you can take it out, replace it with your own, and create your own pallets. But first we want to have a look at some of the default choices that we've made. All of the wood materials share this selection of blocks. If I go over to mangrove, we have that same selection. Same for birch too. Blackstone, for example, has a rather large pallet, lots of blocks lumped into this one. And the same for Deep Slate. Of course, this was never in the game in Season 7, so currently it's empty. Now remember, these are still a work in progress. Your feedback will be helpful, and already I'm reminded of some changes we are yet to implement. A question here with the nether brick palette is, should it actually include netherrack? I'm not sure, but it gives you access to all of those blocks. Then when it comes to glass, regular glass and tinted glass is not a part of this palette yet. And this brings me to a secondary feature. When you're in this menu like this, you can actually middle click on your mouse and switch to another variant, so you can see that these are linked to their glass panes. And once again, the same with wall. If I middle click, we get to see carpets. Terracotta and glazed terracotta are linked together like this, as is concrete and concrete powder. With coral blocks, things are a little different because it also includes items, but they are linked to their dead corals, as you might suspect. And in trying to keep this bare bones, we have not linked together too many items, as there's just so many things you could group together, and you tend to put blocks for building more so on your hotbar. Now there is a big exception when it comes to selecting items, and that is dyes. You may notice that glow ink is included on this palette, the reason being that you can use them to dye signs, so being able to quickly switch out to a different colour and change the colour of the sign is pretty darn useful. And so we tried to put an emphasis on linking all of the blocks in the game together, not so much the items. But here are some of the items that did get turned into pallets, and the idea here was to focus more so on ones that are decoratively useful. And now you're probably thinking, some of these items could easily be grouped with more of them, and you're probably right, but as I've said, we've tried to keep this thing bare bones. Now you might be wondering how I was able to see a preview of what was in the chest. This is a feature of the mod that can be enabled here. It's called edit mode, so you can use this to put together your own pallets. There is also toggle mode that changes the functionality from holding down the key to simply pressing it to bring up the menu. And then there's creative cheat mode. This one simply means if you're in creative mode, then you don't need to have any other items in your inventory. It will just magically give you the exact one that you pick. And let me make this really clear. It doesn't affect survival mode. It only works if you're in creative. Now what's next for me in this video is to show you many of the pallets that we put together. That's why I'm doing some fast editing right now of each of these previews of the pallets. If you really want to study them, you can pause the video. Otherwise, this should probably have given you a good idea as to all the groups of blocks that we have grouped together in these pallets. So next in this video, we're going to look at the behavior of lists, which allow you to swap out tools and weapons. If I select my pick, you'll see that we have a large selection of items here to choose from, which I've renamed in a punny way. These are all the tools that I used in the season from this shulker box. Now let's say I wanted to swap a weapon, we do the same thing again. What you'll notice is that there's only one option for a regular bow here. If I open up my inventory though, you'll see I actually have 6 bows, and because they're identical, they don't appear on the list multiple times. This can also be said of buckets. If I open this up, I have these 4 options, yet if we go into my inventory, you'll see that I've got way more milk buckets and lava buckets. The other list types in this game are as follows. All of the food has been lumped together. You can select different heads, and this will also work with heads that have a custom texture, as you can see here. All of these tools have been grouped together, as have these tools, these weapons, all of these bucket types, and banners. You'll notice there's only one item in here. And that is because one can make many different banner types. Any that are identical won't appear twice though. This leads me to our very last list, which was originally for enchanted books. How do you tell the player what enchantment is on the book? In figuring this out, eventually we realized that no one really uses enchanted books on their hotbar, but potions, this can be very useful. So normally you can only see the name of the potion, whereas when you open up this menu, it tells you its effects and duration, meaning you can see the exact type that you want to pick out. And that is actually one of my favorite little details with this mod. Rather than having to look at the potion to see the tooltip and understand what it does, it's right there for you in the list. So you've now seen the lists and the pallets that are the core of this mod, and everything with them's been implemented in a pretty bare bones approach. For example, the items on my hotbar here are not part of any pallets, and that's because they're kind of odd to group together with other blocks. When it comes to building, we didn't really want to influence the player's build palette too much by lumping together obscure blocks that don't have too many other ones that naturally fit together. The idea is to provide the player with convenience and not to influence the aesthetic choices when undertaking creative builds. It should be said though, the ability to link blocks together based on their color gradient could actually be really powerful. Perhaps an additional key that pulls up similar colored blocks could be an interesting addition to this mod. And having intelligent ways to jump between different build palettes could turn out to be really useful for navigating such a large amount of blocks that this game offers. Here's another idea that could be fantastic for this mod. What if you've actually got nothing in your hotbar? What happens then? Well, here is my inventory. I guess it saves me opening up, looking around, dragging to the hotbar. Is that worth it? Questions like these need to be answered, including this one. Should you be able to use it while you're still moving around in the world? So the mod is available for you to use and to customize. It's linked in the description box down below. And while you're heading down there, leave a like on this video and of course leave a comment and give us some feedback. This is an iterative process where we're going to try and improve the mod as we go along. And if you're still here and you're looking for something else to watch, then please do check out my Minecraft discussions playlist. There is a lot of thoughtful and interesting content on this playlist. It is linked down below. So that's it. Thanks for watching and I'll see you soon.